In the time of Obi-Wan Kenobi's exile on Tatooine to watch over the last hope for the Jedi, Luke Skywalker, a monstrous drought struck the planet which was the worst that had been seen in many years. It was so bad that Obi-Wan almost considered taking Luke and the Lars family to a different backwater world because they couldn't survive much longer without water. Things got even worse though when Jabba the Hutt imposed a disgusting water tax on all moisture farmers, threatening to take away the little amount of water that the Lars family were able to collect. In order to enforce the tax, Jabba sent one of his most fierce hunters known as Black Krrsantan to terrorize the Lars homestead, and once he got there he lost control and nearly killed Obi-Wan Kenobi. So remember to subscribe and let's find out how this horrible event went down. The story begins out on the dry and battered sands of Tatooine where Black Krrsantan is being escorted by a group of Jabba's enforcers who tell the Wookiee that on this spot 5 of Jabba's toughest warriors were killed in cold blood. Even as Jabba fed the witnesses to the Rancor, nobody saw who took these warriors out and they have never found any trace of what actually happened. Black Krrsantan simply roars and the Nikto enforcer has no clue if he's even listening, but the big furry beast knows his objective. He knows that he has to kill whoever was responsible for these mysterious cold-blooded killings, especially since whoever it was also blocking the collection of water taxes on Tatooine, something which Jabba would not stand for. Moving all the way over to the Lars homestead, Owen Lars calls out to Luke and tells him that he has picked up some parts from Tosche Station to fix up the Skyhopper that was recently damaged. Strangely though, he can't find Luke anywhere. Owen looks around the homestead and calls out to Beru to see if she knows where Luke is, but nothing. Then out of nowhere, a menacing black beast comes up from behind Owen and traps his mouth shut so that he can't scream. What Owen didn't know was that Luke had run away from home. Luke was sick of his life as a moisture farmer, and with almost no water remaining for him to survive comfortably, he thought it would be better to run, to get on a ship, any ship, and go anywhere in the galaxy but here. Although before he could make it too far away from the homestead, something deep within Luke warned him not to run and alerted him that Uncle Owen was in danger. Although he didn't know it yet, this was the Force guiding Luke to where he was needed most. The young boy then rushes back to his home and frantically searches for Aunt Beru and his uncle before finding her on the ground with a blaster in hand. Aunt Beru is horrified and warns Luke that it took him. Luke asks, what took him? And is simply told that something big, covered in fur and strong took Owen. Finally, Aunt Beru warns Luke to lock himself in the maintenance bay and to not come out until he hears her voice. Moving back to Black Krrsantan, he has firmly got Owen in his grasp now and begins to torture him in an absolute rage. Owen has no idea what the black-furred beast wants or why he's here, and pleads with Krrsantan since he doesn't speak Wookiee. Black Krrsantan is then about to give Owen a direct blast to the head, but before he can swing his arm, something gets his attention from behind. As he turns around, he sees a brown-robed man, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Owen is shocked to see Kenobi coming to his aid after all the trouble he has given him, but Obi-Wan was actually just meditating among the banthas in the Dune Sea when he felt a deep disturbance in the Force. He knew that something was wrong and there was a tightness in his gut that he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Black Krrsantan then squares up with Kenobi ready to knock him out, thinking he's an old fool. Obi-Wan however knows this Wookiee story. He recounts his name and immediately realizes that he's the famous Wookiee bounty hunter who was disgraced from the people of Kashyyyk and forced to leave the planet in exile from a very young age. Obi-Wan then strikingly says that he's the one that Black K has been looking for. He's the one who's been intercepting the enforcers of Jabba and stopping them from collecting the water tax. Now instead of doing anything too rash, Obi-Wan tries a simple mind trick, asking Black Krrsantan to leave this place. But before he can even finish the sentence, the black-furred beast strikes Kenobi down to the ground with a single powerful swing. Black Krrsantan then leaps on top of Kenobi ready to lay into him again, and this time bites a huge chunk out of his arm, leading Kenobi to scream out in pain. In his mind, Obi-Wan didn't care what happened to him, but he had to make sure no harm ever came to Luke. Obi-Wan then tries to ignite his lightsaber but fails and is picked up by Black Krrsantan, who begins choking him out with fury. At this point, Obi-Wan genuinely believes he is about to die and that someone else must protect Luke. Krrsantan continues roaring in his native tongue while depriving Obi-Wan of air, then dangles him over the edge of the nearby cliff. Instead of throwing him down to a brutal impact, Krrsantan instead drops Kenobi, leading him to sigh internally with relief. As Kenobi pulls himself up from the rocky surface below him, he realizes that he is worth more alive than dead to Jabba. Because of this, Black Krrsantan pulls out his net blaster and traps Obi-Wan with a sparkling electro net, ready to deliver him straight to Jabba. In a feat of bravery though, Owen Lars emerges from behind Black K and attempts to knock the massive Wookiee out, but fails miserably. Kenobi then warns Owen that it is him that Black Krrsantan wants, and that he'd better run to protect Luke. Internally, Kenobi tells himself that he and Owen have had many differences over the years, but the man was certainly not a coward. Tatooine wouldn't allow cowards to survive. Moments later, Black Krrsantan has absolutely had enough and launches Uncle Owen over the nearby cliff, sending him plunging to a certain death. Before he can hit the ground though, Obi-Wan uses the Force to save him and begs for Master Qui-Gon to guide his hand through the Force. This saves Owen as well as hurls a bunch of rocks at Black Krrsantan, sending him into a confused daze. This allows Obi-Wan to summon his lightsaber towards him with the Force and cut himself free from the trap. Kenobi then uses the Force to slam Black Chrysanthemum into a nearby rock before rushing over to help Owen get away from the cliff face. Black Chrysanthemum won't give up that easily. He lifts a tremendous boulder towards Kenobi and is about to crush him to death. Thinking quickly though, Kenobi leaps into the air with the Force and ignites his lightsaber before slicing a gash over Chrysanthemum's eye. And this is actually where he gets his infamous scar, which we can see in the Book of Boba Fett and the rest of the comics. Black Chrysanthemum continues raging forward and attempting to kill Kenobi, but time is quickly running out for Owen Lars, who is hanging off of the cliff. Eventually, the old farmer slips and plummets down the rock face, but thankfully he is held afloat by Kenobi, and Kenobi warns him not to just float there but to grab something. And it's a very good thing that he did grab something, because Black Chrysanthemum is back and ready to kill Obi-Wan for scarring his eye. This time though, Obi-Wan manages to strike back and destroy the Wookiee's weapon, giving him a fighting chance. Obi-Wan takes a direct punch to the jaw from Black Chrysanthemum, and this time he just can't shake it off. He is left helpless as Owen plummets down to his death. That is until Luke races in piloting his T-16 speeder and manages to catch Uncle Owen on his gun turrets. Luke screams through the cockpit for his uncle to hold on, and the Force guides him to safety, leaving Obi-Wan stunned but also hopeful for the future. He knows that this is the boy who will save everyone one day. But things with Black Chrysanthemum haven't got much better, and the Wookiee pulls out a bowcaster and fires on Kenobi, but is obviously no match for the hardened Jedi Master, even after all these years brooding out in the Sons of Tatooine. Obi-Wan then calls Black Chrysanthemum the rudest Wookiee he has ever come across, before carefully directing a blaster bolt directly to his arm, searing the fur off of his hide. Obi-Wan then calls out for Chrysanthemum to give up. He is blinded and wounded and can't possibly win. Then something shocking happens. Rather than give up, Black Chrysanthemum roars out in pain and throws himself off of the cliff behind him to his death. Or so Obi-Wan believes. This puts an end to the saga, and Kenobi can rest knowing that Luke is safe. Back at the Lars homestead, Luke lands his Skyhopper and rushes over to his uncle, apologizing for flying the speeder when he shouldn't have, but Owen doesn't care. He's just grateful that he was saved and gives Luke a massive hug. Owen also looks up at Kenobi and gives him a wink for helping to save the boy. Despite all of their problems, he knows that Kenobi will always be there to protect Luke. Cutting away from the homestead, we see that Black Chrysanthemum has been rescued and put into a hood to conceal his identity. Obi-Wan found no body among the rocks, and rumor quickly spread around Tatooine that he had fled off-world. This was correct, and Black Chrysanthemum left Tatooine with a hate-fueled grudge against Kenobi. He knew that he couldn't return or Jabba would feed him to the Rancor. Back with Luke and his family, Obi-Wan watches over and not a single word was spoken between him and Owen. He was just happy to see Owen safely return to the family. Obi then returned to his own family among the Banthas to meditate, even naming a couple of them. Life continued flowing for all of those on Tatooine, and the threat of the water tax was now extinguished and Jabba defeated on the issue. Obi-Wan's mind was put at ease that a new hope would soon emerge, and that he would do anything he could to protect that new hope in blood and fire and sand and sky. So that is how Black Chrysanthemum almost killed Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you want to see more Black Chrysanthemum content, including the Dr. Aphra comics, make sure you let me know in the comments down below and leave a like while you're down there. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.